Every mile drives the economy, from the drivers who fill the shelves to the professionals, investments, and innovations that support it. Behind it all are decisions made every day, under pressure and at scale. Hosted by leaders from across the industry, this is Cents Per Mile, insights that drive better decisions, a CD Life production.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Tom Albrecht, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Reliance Partners, and I'm joined by my colleagues today, Karen Smirchek, President and owner of Varia Trucking out of Wisconsin, and Kevin Hall, the CEO of Cub Ventures and CDL Life. Before we get rolling, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below, or head on over to the centspermilepodcast.com to submit a topic for us to review on a future show. You know what, guys? We're already slightly more than halfway through the year. It's hard to believe that. And I feel like July is going by at the fastest pace of any month so far. But, you know, when you reach the halfway point, it's also a good occasion to step back and reflect just a little bit on what the first half of the year looked like. And it was kind of a crazy year. Lots of things going on in trucking. We've had a market that continued to turn, mostly by supply, seemingly, although there have been some occasional demand descriptions that have been good. Tariffs continue to impact. We've had the Montgomery SCOTUS case. Non-domiciled and English-speaking enforcement outcomes have continued. It's continued to impact driver availability, the overall supply in the market. We continue to see AI adopted. The driver situation overall has gotten the most challenging it's been in years. And so, guys, I'm just going to kind of throw that out as a potpourri of things and see what you're thinking about the first half of the year. Kevin, you want to start us?
Sure. It seems like to me, again, halftime. This is halftime, right? So we get to do a little bit of analysis of the first half and talk about what the second half is, adjustments we're going to make for the second half coming up. But yeah, you know, it almost feels like, I don't know about you all, it almost feels like it just kind of happened. Like all the stuff just kind of happened. We woke up one day and all these changes had been in place, and now we're starting to see, wow, wait, things are good. Things are starting to click now. Yeah, of course, we live and breathe in the driver space, right? So that's near and dear to our heart, and just a dramatic change. If you go back to even January, February to today, dramatic difference. We talked about that in the last episode around driver recruiting, and we'll talk more about that coming up in future episodes, I'm sure. But that's the biggest piece. The other part that I will mention real quick is just the AI adoption, AI conversations. I think we're coming off of that first wave of AI within logistics and kind of taking an assessment of what worked, what didn't work, how we're starting to weave it into our companies. So it's an exciting time for sure in trucking.
Karen, let me ask you a question. If we go back to around Christmas time and what were your expectations, versus what you actually played out during the first half of this year? Let's just start with your company, and then we can kind of talk about the market in general. How did Varia perform from a miles perspective, maybe miles per truck per week? What's been happening with your freight rates? Also, has your driver situation deteriorated? Just kind of high level there for everyone.
You got a lot packed into that question, Tom. So big picture, if you starting where you asked, Christmas time, deflated. I didn't want to be wrong again saying that the market was shifting, even though we had picked up signs that it was going to shift. So the budget that we created for 2026 was conservative because I just didn't want, my ego couldn't afford to be wrong again of saying the market was changing, even though we felt some of those signs in fourth quarter. But yet, like, my gut said the market was shifting, but my brain said, is this the traditional fourth quarter influx that we haven't felt in 2 years? But definitely now when we look at what that first half of 2026 looked like, it's been moving at a rapid pace. All of the fraud and things like that we were dealing with, and now that data is known and transparent to these operators, it's making an impact on the supply that we're working with. So now we are crazy busy, but it actually feels good. Like the busyness of operations is working on winning versus not losing, which is just a completely different mindset and picking your people up and like they're running after something now versus trying to not lose.
Right. That's
But
a
yeah,
huge
so
thing.
definitely a lot. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Well, so how is your driver situation? Let's just delve into that versus either what you need to be at or versus expectations.
Yeah, from that driver side, and this is, talking about myself and a lot of other fleets from the recruiting standpoint, is less drivers have been hired in 2026 than over the same period in 2025. And everyone's feeling that because as those non-domiciled CDLs expire, they're not getting renewed. And any fleets that have those drivers in their fleet are coming after my drivers now, right? And so and I think even looking at January, normally that's one of your best recruiting months, and we didn't see that spike that we normally see in January. But I would say, there's two different pieces to that. That we didn't hire as many inexperienced drivers through our training program because I needed to give FMCSA to clean up the schools to ensure that I was hiring a qualified driver that was ready for on the road training. Where now we're ready to get back at that. So hence those moving pieces of all things on the driver count um, quite haven't had that snowball effect because someone coming through the school to being qualified on the road has quite quite the runway to get there.
Tom, you have conversations day in, day out. I know you're on the speaker tours almost weekly. What are you hearing from all the conversations that you're having out there about the first half? What are the shippers feeling? What are some of the customers that you interact with and some of the execs out there on the
Well,
road?
yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. And I think number one, the shippers are feeling a lot of pressure. Um, they're not going to meet their budgets this year. And I think they're struggling because for many companies, especially like CPG companies, unless they've got a hot new product or two, they're not seeing a whole lot of demand. Demand is tied to the data centers. So the flatbed carriers are going crazy. We're going to have a flatbed carrier at our event next week in Nashville. And I was speaking to him and just the amount of rate increases that he's getting. He's focused his business more around project freight. So a lot of 90 to 120 day projects, but it's basically name your price. Fleets are way behind on the drivers. It's been interesting to see some of the fleets out there already with multiple pay increases. Two that have caught my mind are Crete out of Nebraska. They put out videos highlighting every time they raise pay. And I think Nussbaum's done a couple as well. And I know there are others. I think the word Karen talked about was how fast moving this year has been. Things have moved way faster than people expected, yet shippers are trying to remind carriers that, hey, our annual bid will be in December or it'll be after Labor Day or whatever it is for that company, and trying to remind folks of how they've worked together. And some shippers are better at that than others. But I would say in general, the year for the trucking industry, the motor carrier and freight broker community, simply from a rate and volume perspective, has been a pleasant surprise. Now you get into issues of contract versus spot and where you might be stuck with, but versus what people thought about around Christmas time, the year has generally exceeded expectations, even as they deal with pinch points.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to our board. These folks are steeped in experience, just like you all in the logistics space, trucking, and they told me it's going to happen fast. When it happens fast. Be ready for it. Get prepared for it. And I got to be honest, like I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I hear you. And now it's like that's what I said. It almost feels like it's overnight. Overnight, things change as quickly, and that's why I'm thankful that we got prepared. We built technologies. We built new solutions. We restructured our organization. We got ready for this because obviously we go with the cycles in a lot of ways. But for you two, like, have you seen it happen this fast? I mean, you go back to post COVID, and I heard it was very fast. Did you expect this rate of change and how fast it happened this time? Is this normal? Is it atypical? How do you feel about those?
Karen, I'll let you answer first.
I'll say I describe operations in trucking as you're putting fires out all day long. And so fast is the normal of operations. And we work to coach our team to be proactive versus reactive. So we have less fires to put out, but you're dealing with humans and machines and you're always going to have those items. And so when we talk about the speed, it's about the customers reaching out with the urgency that create that. So I think that this is the norm, but really going back to the supply side recovery is, are you using the data to make you aware of where things aren't aligned with your business plan?
Well, and Kevin, your question is about speed. Yes, these cycles happen this fast. I'm not surprised. I was an early believer in the enforcement efforts. I felt like, to use a sports analogy, which I've done in the past, but when we were at the worst point of the excess supply, second half of 22, most of 23, and early 24, it was like a baseball player who was missing a fastball by 10 to 12 inches. And as the industry worked off that excess capacity, that baseball player equivalency was only missing the fastball by an inch or two. But until you make connection, you don't realize how close you've been. And so I felt like the industry was only a percent or two away from equilibrium as we got into the second half of last year around this time. So it wasn't going to take a whole lot, but until you hit that point where you actually begin to have more load tenders than you can accept, quality load tenders, not just any load, it's hard to get people to be a believer. But that's been the cycle really since about 2003, 2004. They're very abrupt when they change for the better. And then it generally catches people off guard when it goes southbound.
Trucks run on diesel, but America runs on truck drivers. Every day, they keep shelves stocked, businesses moving, and our economy alive. With nearly 60 million views and 2.9 million followers, this is where drivers live. If you are looking for drivers, they're at CDL Life.
Kevin, what are you seeing? Are you seeing a lot of your customers throwing more money at the driver side of it as well, similar to what Tom said?
Yeah,
Well, Kevin,
it's interesting. There's two. I would categorize them in two ways. One, yes, there are many companies that still just throw money at marketing to increase their driver hires. We're starting to see more and more, and what we focused on is more the process, the innovation, the technology to help clients get better and improve and recruit better. At the end of the day, they don't have to spend more marketing dollars to recruit better. And so we are seeing an uptick in that, and they have to see it. They have to. It's one thing to talk about these things, but they have to actually see it in practice and see the results. And again, I go back to any down cycle, any market that we're in. Trucking is one of them. Any market you're in, when there's a down cycle, those that come out better in the upswing are those that focus in their company and improvement during the down cycle. Right? How do we get better in this next one to capture market as we move upward? And so those are the two buckets. And so we've really focused in on that process improvement. How do you recruit better? How do you maximize the dollars you're spending? Where's the fall off? How can we pick up any of that fall off? How can we convince a driver? I mean, again, these drivers, they're still waiting on their part, right? This upswing. When does it hit me? When do I get my part of it? And rightfully so. But the companies who focused on culture, Tom's mentioned in the past, safety, the ones who focused on safety through this, safety are going to come out. And so, yeah, I think that's what we're seeing at least in the first half so far.
Yeah. And from our customer base, Karen, so many of our customers have under 100 trucks, so they tend to be a little bit more followers than leaders in the marketplace. Obviously, many of them are much more dependent upon the spot market. So, they've been able to benefit maybe a little bit faster than the larger enterprise carriers, or really just any carrier that has a majority of its business tied to contracts. But it's hard for us to get data. The anecdotes are that they are raising pay, but someone with 43 trucks or 25 trucks or 11 trucks, unless one of our agents has had dinner with them, we may not know the same level that we would from the larger carrier community.
So you feel like they're financially coming back faster because of the percent of freight in the spot market with that fleet size?
In many cases, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
many of them also, have had some deferments on truck payments and other things. So I think it's a little bit of a balance where the banks are looking at their financial performance. Does it make sense to allow them to continue at the rate of improvement that they're seeing? And so in many cases, the answer is yes. And occasionally the answer is still no.
I'd be curious because you mentioned the banks in this, that I feel like, we've been partnered with a great bank that has supported us through this down market. What are banks looking for in a carrier's financials to say you're gonna make it through to the other side?
Well, I think at this point in the cycle, they're looking for profitability. And even if profitability wasn't attained in the first half of the year, each month should have gotten better. That gives banks a real sense of hope that the second half of the year is going to produce a lot of profitable months for these small carriers. I think that's probably the number one thing. A resumption of payments, all of those things combined. So, I mean, no bank really wants a book of used equipment going into the marketplace, but sometimes that's part of the process where carriers just aren't going to be healthy enough. And, as used equipment prices, they're still not going through the roof like, let's say, spot market prices are. Depends on what part of the country and the make of the tractor or trailer, but they've improved a little bit, and that has given banks some sense of comfort depending upon what part of the marketplace and the age of the equipment you're talking about.
So halftime, right? We're at halftime. We're halfway through. Now we get to go into the locker room and review what happened in the first half, come up with game plan for the second half, make adjustments, all of those things. So Karen, where's your head at right now? What are some of the things you're hearing from all the people you have conversations with in the market? What's some of the top things they're focused on in the game plan moving forward for H2?
So the ones doing it well are reviewing rates every single week.
Every week.
Have probably added manpower to that department to get it done faster. I'm actually really surprised at how many carriers are still skittish around that. That to me, when the spot market is over the contract market, that's when you should have more courage to price your freight to be profitable at double digit numbers versus single digit numbers. But as a whole, I think everyone is looking at that second half and getting at it, having more confidence in those conversations with their lenders and things such as that. I'd be curious, Tom, on your end, on the tariff side, how you feel that might impact the second half of 2026.
Well, I think we've already seen a little bit of good news. So right before the 4th of July, Walmart announced price cuts on thousands of items. I've seen different figures in that, 3,000 plus items. Another one said even more. Another one said only a little over 1,000. But, they started with ground beef, 12% cut. They're going to be cutting prices on other food items. So things that folks have to buy pretty regularly. They also mentioned outdoor patio furniture, toys, apparel, other things that have been pinch points. And I think one of the factors they said was as they get tariff refunds, this gives them some flexibility to lower prices. And then this morning I saw where PepsiCo, I guess it was on Friday, but I saw it this morning, their CFO said almost the same thing. The tariff refunds are going to allow them to offset some of the commodity price pressures, followed by being able to play offense and being competitive. And ironically enough, Frito-Lay products are one of the products that Walmart said would be coming down. So I think we may see a little bit of a tariff tailwind. I know Sam's has also made that same comment. They're going to lower prices on about 7% of their SKUs in their stores. And they're going to do that on items that are bought pretty regularly, not just once a year purchases. So I think tariffs might end up being a little bit of a tailwind for some companies trying to get some money back. They can't refund it to all the millions of Americans, but they can do that by lowering prices. Obviously, steel and aluminum continue to be issues where there are high tariffs, but the CPG and food and beverage industry look like they might be willing to play price a little bit. So that's one of my big things I'm watching for the second half of this year that might help demand.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know you, Tom, you mentioned when we several weeks back when we talked about super cycle, what happens from the other aspect of the demand side, and we're obviously in the supply side of it right now, and so wow, how fast can things move if that actually takes off in the second half? I mean, we're talking about going into 2027. Karen's going to have a way better December in 26 than she did in 25, maybe a little less stressful. Of course, I'm sure there's always something, right, Karen, that's going to be stressful at that point.
Well, what else are you all looking for in the second half of the year? Either new developments that are going to come and hit the industry, or what else is in your crystal ball, maybe just relative to day-to-day trucking? Either one of those, new things or day-to-day trucking.
I'll say that for Viria, we're really going after getting people into our academy. And I think that it's really easy to say, oh, we're just going to hire experienced drivers because they can get revenue on day one. And that to me, like, yes, experienced drivers, I want them in my fleet, but I almost look at like that's the Band-Aid for the immediate. And by really getting that driver from the academy into a finishing program into your fleet gives you a long-term loyal employee that you can create that relationship with and have much longer run with them compared to what you see typically a 90-day turnover for an experienced hire. You got to keep playing the long game, even though when you have the market similar to what it is, it's easy to make really fast decisions for what you need next week.
Yeah, what's in your crystal ball?
I am excited to see how the industry reacts to all of these changes, because some of this ripple effect that comes off of these regulations, enforcements, changes in the market don't happen immediately. They take time. How fast can you respond to those? And I'm sure in your days from Wall Street, it was intriguing to see this longer effect, the long tail game within that. So I'm really excited to see how the industry adapts to things like drivers. Is it more pay? Are they going to treat them better? Are the drivers actually going to, get their time in the spotlight coming up in H2? Fingers crossed, a little bit better life for those folks that are out there on the road driving these highway miles. What happens with the impact of the brokers now? Like that's significant, right? And so, are they going to push back? Are they going to accept the responsibilities that are now in front of them? How does that impact insurance, Tom? Like that's again, those are some significant things that will set the trend for 2027, I believe.
Well, I'll answer my own question there. I'm going to make a couple of pointed projections or forecast here for the second half of the year. One is I think we will see from the FMCSA either by year end or early in 2027 a number of notice of proposed rulemakings. I don't know whether that'll be 5 or 6 or 10 to 12, but I know that they've been on this great listening tour, getting feedback from all sorts of constituents over the last several months on very pointed topics, from whether there should be a minimum number of hours to obtain a CDL, to insurance, to inspections. There's a whole bunch of things. So I'm looking for a sizable number of notice of proposed rulemakings and looking forward to what the topics are that they're going to address. Secondly, I'm going to predict that either in the second half of this year or early in 2027, there'll be at least one nuclear verdict that goes against a freight broker. And while I'm not wishing that on any freight broker, we do know that a number of brokers have been added to lawsuits. And of course, it depends on how quickly these lawsuits move through. But I think the industry is kind of looking for some guidance around what are the standards going to be. Everyone is really focused on that. We work with a lot of freight brokers and, we hear what they're doing, but there's still a little bit of guesswork. So notice of proposed rulemakings, broker, nuclear verdict, at least one. And then I'll make a third prediction. During COVID, we heard a lot of companies say that probably starting around second half of 21, that drivers felt like they were getting either enough miles or plenty of pay. And so fleets for the first time had to really struggle with, hey, we need you to run all week, not just take off or whenever. And I don't think we're going to hear that for at least a year. So my prediction is they're going to be getting as many miles, optimizing whatever increases that they're getting. And, they, like most people, they've lost some purchasing power the last couple of years. So I don't think we're going to hear that narrative as a prediction for at least a year. So maybe July of 2027, we can bring that topic up again.
That sounds good. Yeah, 2 predictions.
Question for both of you.
Yep.
Are we going to see carriers exit this industry in the second half of 2026? And if so, what will the catalyst be? Lack of drivers, bank payments, or safety ratings? Or your own fourth one or whatever.
Yeah. I do think we will. And we've seen some somewhat meaningful size carriers go out, in May, June, early July. What was it? Mountain City Express just went out the other day. Almost 300 employees, I believe, is what I read. It was a smaller kind of LTL/cartage company, but they went under. There was a company in California, I think Victory Express, that went under. You and I have a friend in Missouri that recently went under with 110 trucks. It's a mix of everything. At this point, almost everyone has been dealing with issues that have left almost no margin left. And I'm not talking about a profit margin, but the margin for error if you're struggling with safety, if you've barely gotten freedom from your banks, or you're stuck with contracts and you're a mid-sized carrier and you don't know how to go out and get those increases until Werner and Schneider and J.B. Hunt and Knight Swift have done that. So I think there will be more failures. I'll just say kind of in that 40 to 200 truck size fleet over the next 9 to 12 months. I think there'll be a few surprises.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see how, not anxious, but it's gonna be interesting to see over the next H2 and then into 27 how some of these continue to hang on and make that transition from, again, really struggling to opportunity. But there's, as you all know, operating a company, going from that really struggling to capturing that opportunity is a significant swing. And so I think that's going to be the biggest impact. Obviously, the ones that didn't focus on safety, didn't focus on brand, didn't focus on drivers, didn't do a lot of the things in the previous, and they're just sort of hanging on for dear life. I still think there's going to be impact of that. And then again, we're in a driver demand situation, right? So how can they actually attract those drivers compared to some of the others that may be able to offer pay increases where they just can't compete from that?
Karen, do you have a rate projection, not so much based upon Varia, but maybe that you want to offer based upon all of your great contacts in the industry? What kind of numbers are they talking about? You mentioned double digit earlier, but double digit could be 10 or 11, or it could be 95%. So
that's a great call out, Tom. I think that people are raising rates in double digits every 90 days until they lose a lane.
I thought it was noteworthy that J.B. Hunt at an investor conference in mid to late June said that they expect rates to go up at least 20% over the next year, which means to me that they're probably going to realize more than that, because for a public company to make a statement like that means that they've got a margin of cushion.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with the statements they made that for us to be a profitable company for our shareholders, we need to get after the rate increases that we didn't receive in 2023 and 2024 and 2025. Also, we can pay our drivers more and retain our drivers. So 100%, I'm on board with that comment.
Well, we're nearing the end of our time here. I want to encourage our audience to go to the centspermile.com podcast, or you can get access to the library of the podcast that we've been doing here in season 6. This is episode 7. You can get access to this one or the others through any of the places that you get your podcast. On behalf of Kevin and Karen and myself, I want to thank everyone for joining us today as we gave our crystal ball for the second half of 2026. Take care, everyone.